The day my wife left me, she looked me straight in the eyes and said something I will never forget. "Daniel, you are a good man, but good men don't own private jets." Those were her exact words. And the man standing beside her wasn't just another guy. He was Richard Bennett. A billionaire CEO. Owner of Bennett Global Holdings. The kind of man whose name appeared on magazine covers. The kind of man who arrived at restaurants with security guards. The kind of man who made ordinary people feel small without even trying. And according to my wife, Emily, he was the man she deserved. I stood there in our living room, still wearing my work clothes, trying to understand what was happening. After 12 years together. 7 years of marriage. Thousands of memories. Everything had come down to one sentence. She smiled almost sympathetically. "Richard can give me a life you'll never be able to. I wish I could tell you I argued. I wish I could tell you I fought for us. But honestly, I was too shocked to speak. Because 30 minutes earlier, I thought I had a happy marriage. I thought Emily was simply having dinner with friends. Instead, she walked through our front door holding hands with another man. And not just any man. One of the richest men in Ohio. Richard Bennett himself. He stood there with a calm smile. Confident. Relaxed. Like he was already the winner. "I'm sorry things had to happen this way," he said. Sorry. The billionaire who had taken my wife was apologizing to me. Emily grabbed her suitcase. Apparently she had packed earlier that day. Everything had been planned. Everything. She kissed me on the cheek. On the cheek. Like I was some relative she wouldn't see for Christmas. And then she said the words that hurt more than the affair itself. "I've outgrown this life, Daniel. Not you. This life." As if our life together had been some phase she had matured beyond. As if 12 years of love were nothing more than an old apartment she was moving out of. 10 minutes later. She was gone. And so was my world. I sat alone in that house until sunrise. Not crying. Not screaming. Just staring at the front door. Waiting for her to come back. Waiting for someone to tell me this was all some terrible misunderstanding. But nobody came. 3 days later, divorce papers arrived. Richard's lawyers had prepared everything. Of course they had. Billionaires don't improvise. They plan. They calculate. They win. At least. That's what I believed. Because back then, I was just Daniel Carter. Owner of a small software consulting company. 41 years old. No luxury cars. No yachts. No helicopters. Just a normal life. And according to my wife, that wasn't enough. The divorce became final 6 months later. Emily didn't ask for much. She didn't need to. Richard's money made everything I owned look insignificant. And once everything was over, she disappeared into her new life. Social media showed vacations in Monaco. Private jets. Designer dresses. 5-star hotels. Champagne on yachts. Pictures with celebrities. And every time I saw those photos, I felt smaller. Like maybe she had been right. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe ordinary men really did lose to billionaires. Then one day, something happened that changed everything. Because 6 months after the divorce, I accidentally discovered something about Richard Bennett. Something nobody knew. Something that would eventually destroy his empire. And the craziest part? He handed me the first piece himself. Without even realizing it. Back then. Neither of us knew it. But the billionaire who stole my wife had just created the man who would one day own his company. For the first 6 months after my divorce, I was barely functioning. I worked. I slept. I ate whatever happened to be in the refrigerator. And every night before going to bed, I made the same mistake. I checked Emily's social media. It became a form of self-torture. Paris. Dubai. Private islands. Luxury resorts. Richard Bennett standing beside her with that same confident smile. And Emily looked happy. Really happy. At least that's what the pictures suggested. Meanwhile, I was sleeping alone in a two-bedroom townhouse and wondering where I had failed. Then something unexpected happened. One afternoon, I received a phone call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end belonged to someone named Michael Foster. He introduced himself as one of Bennett Global's regional suppliers. Apparently, Richard had mentioned my software company during a business dinner. He needed help modernizing one of his logistics systems. At first, I almost laughed. The irony was unbelievable. The billionaire who stole my wife was indirectly sending business my way. But money was money. And my company needed clients. So I accepted. 3 weeks later, I walked into B. By the 4th year after my divorce. My life looked nothing like it had the day Emily walked out. My company had grown faster than I ever imagined. We had offices in 3 states. Nearly 100 employees. And for the first time in my life, people were calling me successful. Ironically, the one person who had never believed I could reach that level was the reason I had pushed so hard. Not because I wanted her back. That chapter had ended long ago. But because somewhere deep inside me, I wanted to prove that ordinary men were capable of extraordinary things. Then the news broke. Bennett Global stock had fallen almost 30%. Investors were panicking. Financial analysts started asking uncomfortable questions. Debt. Cash flow problems. Failed acquisitions. Everything I had quietly suspected for years was finally becoming public. Richard Bennett appeared on television trying to calm shareholders. But I recognized the look in his eyes. Fear. The same fear I had seen during those late-night meetings years earlier. The empire was shaking. And when giant companies shake, predators start circling. Private equity firms. Competitors. Investment groups. Everyone smelled blood. That's when something happened I never expected. A venture capital firm approached me. At first, I thought they wanted another software investment. Instead, they wanted something much bigger. One of Bennett Global's subsidiaries was about to be sold. And they wanted me to run it. I nearly laughed. Because life has a strange sense of humor. 5 years earlier, I had been the man abandoned for a billionaire. Now investors were asking me to help dismantle that billionaire's empire. After months of negotiations, the deal happened. Not the whole company. Not yet. But a major division. And I became CEO. Suddenly, newspapers started mentioning my name. Business magazines requested interviews. People wanted to hear the story of Daniel Carter. The quiet entrepreneur who had built something remarkable. I refused almost every interview. Because I wasn't interested in attention. I was interested in building. Meanwhile, Richard's problems kept getting worse. More debt. More lawsuits. More shareholders demanding answers. And then came the announcement nobody expected. Bennett Global was officially putting itself up for acquisition. The mighty empire was for sale. Wall Street exploded. News channels covered the story non-stop. Analysts predicted competitors would divide the company into pieces. Nobody imagined what was about to happen. Because behind closed doors, the venture capital firm and I had already started preparing an offer. It wasn't revenge. At least not entirely. It was business. Cold. Logical. Calculated business. Months of meetings followed. Lawyers. Bankers. Accountants. Investors. Hundreds of hours. Millions of dollars. And finally, one rainy Thursday morning, the papers were signed. I sat in a boardroom looking at documents worth more money than I had earned in my entire first 40 years of life. And when the final signature was complete, Bennett Global officially belonged to us. Richard Bennett's empire was over. The billionaire who once took my wife had lost everything he spent his life building. But fate still wasn't finished. Because ownership brought something unexpected. Access. Access to everything. Company records. Executive files. Human resources reports. And that's when I learned something shocking. Emily was still working inside the company. Not as an executive. Not as some glamorous partner. Not even close. She worked in marketing. Middle management. No special privileges. No luxury lifestyle. No private jets. Apparently, Richard's financial problems had forced them to cut back years ago. Their marriage had become strained. The expensive vacations had disappeared. And according to rumors, they fought constantly. But the biggest surprise came 2 weeks later. When my assistant walked into my office. "You have 2 people requesting a meeting," she said. "Who?" She hesitated. "Richard Bennett and Emily Bennett." For several seconds, I thought she was joking. But she wasn't. They were downstairs. Together. Waiting. And neither of them knew. Who now sat in a chair at the top floor. Because after 6 years, the woman who left me for a billionaire, and the billionaire she chose, were about to walk into my office and discover who really owned the company, including their careers. My assistant escorted them upstairs, and I stood near the window overlooking the city. Not because I wanted to appear dramatic, but because I needed a few seconds. 6 years. 6 years of pain. 6 years of growth. 6 years of rebuilding. And now, the 2 people who destroyed my old life were walking toward me. There was a knock. "Mr. Carter, they're here."